Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to do a real quick sound check myself, just make sure that everyone can hear me. Up at the top of your screen, you should see an icon with a hand raised. Go ahead and click that so that I know that you can all hear me. And then we're going to jump right in. Yes. Hey, Stephanie. How are you? Talisha. Hello, Miss Talisha. Miss Angela. See so many familiar names. Thank you for joining us today. So glad you all were able to take a little bit of time out for your very, very busy trying to understand COVID-19 and all things related to it to join us today. Making sure you're in the right place. This is the Early Childhood Care and Education Transition to Kindergarten webinar. It is sponsored by Early Childhood for Professional Learning. A plethora of my wonderful, trusted colleagues have joined us today, and that is Iris from Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development, Ms. Tamara Notter, who's an early childhood education consultant, and Jaclyn Vasquez from the Early Development Instrument and Associate Director of Erickson Institute. Our colleague Grace Araya will physically not be with us today. She experienced some unexpected circumstances and was not able to join us, but being the trooper that she is, she's been in communication with me. We've gone over the slides that she gave. So between myself, Iris, and Jaclyn, we're going to pinch hit for her. Those of you that have already signed up for the family engagement webinar next week, she'll be joining us for that one for sure. So again, you see you've got lots of folks here. We're going to explain in a few minutes why we've all come together to support you. And I'm going to take this opportunity to even explain this particular webinar itself. During May, the Early Childhood for Professional Learning asked me to do some webinars about pre-K to K transition. We have done them before, pre-COVID-19, when programs were face-to-face, and spring comes and everyone's getting excited about helping our students transition from pre-K to kindergarten. Well, we didn't have that opportunity this year because mid-March, things transitioned to off-site teaching and learning experiences. And so the director of ECPL, also known as Early Childhood for Professional Learning, asked me if I would create kind of a, what does this look like in a virtual experience? And I must say they went very well. It started out being one, and before we knew it, the demand was so high that one webinar turned into four, and they just kept pulling from the wait list and pulling from the wait list. But as we were doing these webinars, we noticed that there didn't seem to be a lot of alignment and communication happening between our Head Start and community-based colleagues and school districts. And in fact, I believe it was on May 27th, a morning webinar, during the chats, a director from a Head Start program, she actually put in the chat, "Thank you for doing this. We need help. We're not getting the type of feedback that we need from districts." And so based off of that chat and some further comments and input from that particular director, ECPL realized we wanted to do something that allowed us to particularly reach out and be inclusive so that our Head Start colleagues, our community-based partners, smaller ones as well as chains, if they are in the YMCA, maybe you're housed in a church. This is for all of us. We are all experiencing COVID-19. We are all experiencing wanting to make sure that our children who are aging out have a smooth transition. And so we got the date to do this, and then I reached out to our colleagues just to kind of say, So many more heads are better than one. So between Grace, Iris, Tamara, and myself, we believe we've created something that's going to give you some ideas, going to be lots of chats and polls in here, and some strategies that will really help us think how we can have great communication between ourselves and school districts that will make for smooth transitions and smooth evidence-based practices for all of our children. So this is a little bit about me. Those of you that do not know me, is that Miss Christina there? I don't see the last name, so I think that's you, Miss Christina. Hello to you. This is just a little bit of information about myself. Again, Miss Grace Araya, you'll see a little bit more information about her once we get further on. My good friend, Miss Iris, and I want to give a shout out to Acting Executive Director, Dr. Jamila Jordan. Just so you all know, for all of us to come together, these amounts of agencies, there's a lot of flagpoles, things have to go up and come back down, just so that we can all make sure that we're covering all of our bases. So I want to give a shout out to Dr. Jamila Jordan. You'll hear from Iris a little bit later on today. Miss Tamara Notter, and if any of you know Tamara, seeing her under a tree with a yoga pose, that's Tamara in rare, great form. So I love this picture of her. And then finally, Jaclyn Vasquez, who, as I said before, is an Associate Director, EDI, also known as Early Development Instrument with Erickson Institute's Policy and Leadership Department. So, you know about who we are. Let's kind of jump right into this. First thing we're going to do is a little bit of housekeeping. So we are going to go straight through this. We're not going to take an official break. So you're going to practice self-care. If you need to get some coffee, some tea, stretch your legs, feel free to get up and do that during this time together. Come back, jump in, see where we are with the chats. You'll be just fine. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to give ourselves some grammar grace. If you're like me and if you're Zoomed out or Google Hangout out, you've been typing in your responses since March, and at some point you just have to say, you know what, this thing may not be spelled right, the grammar may not be right, the punctuation may not be right, but I got to get this thought in there, and that's okay. So this is a judgment-free zone. We're going to give ourselves some grammar grace. When we get to those chats, just jump right in, and we are just going to overlook all of those spell check things that we're used to so that we can get our ideas out. There are quite a few of us on today, and I see even more are coming in the room. So if you have any unanswered questions, clarifying questions, wonderings, missed chat response, etc., that right you're seeing right there, that is my website address. Take a screenshot of that. If you miss anything that we did not get to, please contact me through my website, and between myself, ECPL, and the presenters here today, we will do the very best that we can to respond to your questions. So again, any unanswered questions, clarifying questions, wonderings, missed chat response that you just didn't get to, contact me through my website, and I'll make sure that we get back to you as soon as we are able to do so. So having said all of that, we'd like to know who you are. So here we go. What is your current role? Are you an administrator, a consultant, teacher? If you're a teacher, are you pre-K, kindergarten, or other? Teacher assistant, paraprofessional, classroom assistant, family specialist, parent, guardian, or other? And if your answer is other, go ahead and put in the chat and let us know what other is. And maybe you are a therapist, like a speech therapist or a psychologist. So go ahead and put in the chat box. Other than that, just answer this poll. Just give us an idea of who is with us today. Yay, Christy, master teacher, quality specialist. Hi, Connie. I thought that was you, Connie. Hi, Connie. How are you? Okay, Amy. right now, and I love everyone that's on here, but I'm already going to tell you, I have a very soft spot for special ed. So Amy, already, we're best friends on Facebook or Instagram. So yes, shout out to all our special ed. Yes, Juana, infant toddler coach. Wonderful. Wonderful. And I'm going to extend this a little bit more. Samantha, self-contained teacher, instructional coach. Talisha, hey, Miss Roche, how are you? If you are from a district, just in the chat, just say district teacher. We'll get into that a little bit more, but I do want to see how much of a balance we might have. Yay, Samantha. So Samantha, and I don't want to scare anybody off, but all of you district, Samantha, Linda, Shari, I'm going to charge you right now to be very active in the chat so that we can all collectively make sure that we see the need and the importance of connecting with our colleagues who are in community-based programs serving children, Head Start programs serving children. All of them may not be PFA or PFAE, and it's just so important that we have this great dialogue. So thank you so much, Ms. Montgomery, District Administrator. Love, love, love administrators, because you can really get the word out for us. To not wait for community-based programs to reach out to us, we can start reaching out to them. So I think we've got a great mix of folks here. You guys keep going ahead in the chat and get ready for our next one. What type of program do you have? Community-based, PFA, Preschool for All expansion, which is state, Head Start, home-based, district, charter, or private. And again, if you're other, go ahead and type in the chat what that represents. And I know my colleagues, Jaclyn, Tamara, Iris, are looking as well. Oh yes, Stephanie, thank you so much for putting that in there. You guys are, as you're looking at the chat, you will see that Stephanie Hurling just popped in there, StarNet. She is with StarNet, and they do the technical support for a lot of our early childhood special education. She is also the president of Illinois AEYC. I know that they did a blast of this going out. So I just want to recognize Stephanie because, and I might be telling tales out of school, Stephanie, but she and I, we just actually recently had a conversation about what are the things that we can do to put in place now, as well as thinking about support that is going to be needed throughout the 2021 school year. So Stephanie, anytime you want to just jump in the chat with ideas, you might also want to put some information in there about the Illinois AEYC conference that's coming up and is going virtual. That will be great. So I definitely want to acknowledge StarNet. If there's any other StarNet region folks on here, please go ahead and type that in as well. Our school serves all of these kiddos in SPED. Sherry Hahn. NIU CDFC has practicum, childcare, and PFAE. Christy, wow. And is that in NIU, like Northern Illinois University? Which I love. That is the territory of former Representative Bob Pritchard, who served in the Republican caucus for many, many years. He was a mentor to me with many of the commissions and work that I've done in Springfield. So if that is NIU, woo, 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 shout out there. And Teach Plus, yes, that's my good friend Josh Kaufman, does a lot of work there. We're in good hands, everyone. One more quick chat before we move on. And here we just want you to just briefly go into the chat and let us know your purpose for joining the conversation today. Oh, okay, we're going to do that in the center, and that's great because it'll give you a little bit more room to type. Just briefly share with us your purpose for joining the conversation today. And as you're doing that, I'm just going to give that shout out. The Growing Futures Virtual Conference has been transitioned from face-to-face October 24th. Registration will be coming soon. You might be in the presence of someone that's going to be doing a keynote. Stephanie, am I allowed to say that yet? But yeah, please be on the lookout for that because obviously it's such a great conference. And thank you, Stephanie. So I have been asked to do one of the keynote sessions for the upcoming conference, really helping us to just really have some candid conversations about diversity and equity and implicit bias and what that really means and what it does not mean and how we can use evidence-based practices based off of some of NACY's position papers for our community, and I always think our community is trendsetters, to really set some great trends that are higher up, starting at first grade, kindergarten up, will be able to learn from us. So stay tuned for that registration coming up. And I'm seeing that we've got new parents New parents have not received feedback from school districts. How to support preschool children transitioning to kindergarten during this time of year. Be able to better prepare to support students with disabilities. Yes. Students with disabilities and their families as they transition from pre-K to K. I love that one right there. For those of you who don't know, next week we are presenting this group, the majority of us from this group, we will be joined from my dear friend, Dr. Christina Pacione-Zayas from Erickson. She's a policy director at Erickson. We're actually going to be doing a specifically focused webinar on family engagement and empowerment. There'll be little snippets of it here today, but for those of you that don't know, and we can put that information up for you. I believe registration is still open for that. Karen Abinson can let us know, and that webinar will be going really deep into what this looks like when we're talking to families about being engaged, being truly our first teachers. We've learned that, if nothing else, from COVID-19. Families are truly our first and ongoing teachers, how to engage with them, how to let them know that we value them as true stakeholders. So thank you for sharing that, and that will be coming up. Wanting to help our students supporting pre-K to K transitions, and all of these are going to be captured, and we'll be studying these to inform either the webinar next week, but more importantly, to inform what it is that ECPL and all of us together might need to do as far as future webinars or future technical assistance to support everyone. So first things first, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, everything that you're looking here, nothing of that changes by anything that's going to be said today. Nothing that is going to be said today is meant to circumvent IDEA, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, ADA, ESSA, and more importantly, any of the guidelines coming out from the State Board of Education, any of the executive orders or guidelines from the Office of Governor Pritzker, and any district or director determinations for 2021 academic year. This is to give you ideas, this is to give you support, but nothing, IDEA, 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, ADA, ESSA, they are still the law of the federal land, and we are all held accountable to those laws to abide by them. And then, of course, we don't want to do anything that would frustrate the process of already uncharted waters. So anything that guidelines that have come out from ISB or the governor's office, we definitely want to make sure that we're adhering to those, and we are advising you to do the same. So what are we dealing with? All these unknown variables. We've got phases, regions, formulas, so much to make our heads spin. What we know is what we're asking you all to focus on today. Our known variables, and those are usually the things that you are empowered to do something about. We know the 2021 academic year will take place. We know that children aging out will have a different teacher and ultimately be in a different building, perhaps. We know that evidence-based practices stand the test of time. We also know from the 2018 Kindergarten Transition Advisory Committee report that these three findings are crucial to us being able to work together to make sure that not only are we creating seamless transitions for our children, we are creating a network of support for ourselves to be able to have aligned teaching and learning, aligned assessments and data, and especially that last one, strengthen cross-sector partnerships, which looks like this. Pre-K and kindergarten transition processes that include families, educators, classroom assistants, early childhood community partners. And in fact, it is that recommendation from the Kindergarten Transition Advisory Committee report, that brought all of us together today. It's so easy for us to say, hey, you need to invite as many people to the table as you can, but are we really living that out if you constantly have only one person presenting to you? So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to our co-presenters today. We are trying to literally live out strengthening cross-sector partnerships by giving you lots of ideas from many different lenses as we move forward today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad you're with us today, and I'm so grateful at all the different roles of people that are joining us today. So many wonderful heads put together with probably ideas bubbling on how to really work best with our preschool children transitioning to kindergarten. This is a little bit about me. I don't need to get into it full-heartedly, but I do want you to know I do come from a beginning lens of actually teaching preschool in a lot of settings, community childcare, Head Start, hospital-sponsored, and then moving forward to working at resource and referral and moving into a consultant role, doing preschool for all coaching and early Head Start coaching. So I have all those different experiences and hats on, and I kind of feel the presence of all of you as I've been in many of your roles as well. So I'm very excited about doing this presentation today. So this section of the presentation really brings up overarching concepts about preschoolers transitioning into kindergarten. Preschoolers come to kindergarten from so many places. It might be home, it might be family childcare, community-based childcare in preschool, Head Start, preschool for all, expansion, so many places. And here we all are, being able to work together in the best interest of preschoolers transitioning to kindergarten. I do want to bring up this quote because sometimes quotes can really get us to reflect and think about, gosh, what part can I play in making all of this happen? So I am going to read the quote. Too often, government officials design programs for children as if they live their lives in silos, as if each stage of a child's life were independent of the other, unconnected to what came before or what lies ahead. This quote comes from a man named James Heckman, who's an American economist. And when you have some time on your own, you may want to delve into some of his research because he truly sees the connection between economics, child care education, and the education of our very young. And I think you'll find some of his work very interesting. And even though on this slide I say preschool staff and kindergarten staff, I broaden this to everyone that's on this webinar today about us working together to make the connections, breaking down those silos and those barriers of communication. We really want to create a seamless system of education that is connected from one stage of a child's life to the next. So it runs more like a pipeline or a river for that child traveling through their life. And preschool and kindergarten staff, whatever your role is with these wonderful young beings, we really help to create that positive school experience. We're the beginning of it all. So in the end, we really want to reduce the chance of any children getting lost in any system. Our goal is to just let these wonderful human beings become who they're meant to be. So, a really important way to do this, and Antoinette already brought this up, communication is key. Nothing happens within the world without relationships. And this means the relationships of all types of preschool staff working together with all types of kindergarten staff, no matter the setting. We need to build those relationships together and really unify our communication and different ideas that we can do to really work best for the children. In this time, you also heard there are some unknowns and there are some knowns, but right now, while there are some unknowns, there is no such thing as over communicating when we're dealing with the unknowns. Use whatever forms of communication you can to work with each other through preschool and kindergarten. Is it a phone? Is it text? Is it email? Is it Zoom? Is it Google Meets? Whatever we can do at this time and to keep us moving forward. This is our collective opportunity to do things and try things and communicate with each other in this preschool to kindergarten transition in new ways. It offers a lot of different opportunity. And so for us to take a chance in this opportunity. I'm hoping everyone can hear me. I'm just noticing in the chat box that there was some lost audio. If everybody could give me a hand raise just to make sure you're with me, and that'll keep you active. Great, I see the hands. Okay. So keeping communication alive and relationships, building relationships. This next slide is a poll on communication. We really want to hear from you. So in this poll, I just want to point out the different choices. Have you been a proactive pioneer all along in communicating with your school district? Have you tried, but you realize you need to do more follow-up? Are you wanting to do so, but you're not sure where to start? And you really want to, but a mentor would be a really great help. Okay, I'm just making sure that everyone can still hear me because I'm noticing. So give a good hand raise too, right after you take the poll. Great, I'm seeing hands being raised. Okay, if you need me to make the speakers louder, I can do that as well. Okay, the poll results came in. Oh, look, we have about 50% of the people that are proactive pioneers. Really grateful for this. Proactive pioneers, I really want you to take time to reach out to some of your colleagues, whether they're functioning right now in the preschool setting or the kindergarten setting and bring them along with you so you can really help them also open up that communication. I noticed that there's only a few people that have tried but need to continue to follow up. So a lot of people are really wanting to be involved in this, but they're not sure where to start. So the folks that really aren't sure where to start, I would recommend pulling your team together and coming up with ideas and maybe sitting down as a team and writing some action steps. What could we do as a team to connect either to our preschool settings or our kindergarten settings or our school districts and create that plan? We know that when things are written down, they tend to happen more than just talking. So you really want to create a plan. And there's a percentage of people that would really like a mentor. During this time of COVID, when we've all been kind of working in our separate entities, separate places, this is a really good time. The 50% of you that are really having open and good communication, reach out to others to see if they need help. And even in the chat box, you could put maybe a way that you would like to connect, and maybe we could make some connections even through the chat box. I'm hoping that everyone can still hear me well now. It's looking pretty good, but just let me know. On this slide, based on research and work with states, the Education Commission of States came up with definitions about two important key elements as we think about that preschool to kindergarten transition. And one of the elements, of course, is what does effective transitions really mean? So right here, it's clearly defined. We know that we want programs and practices that help children to move smoothly and successfully from one learning setting to another. But I want to point out that families are also listed in this. And I really think pay attention to the webinar that's coming next week regarding families, because this would be a great time for us to learn more about making sure we really connect with families, because they're part of that cross-sector part relationship that got brought up earlier. Now, when we think of effective transitions, there's, in the summary of finding slides, this effective transition really connects with us thinking about strengthening cross-sector relationships. We're not alone. We can do this all together, and if we're all together, we can make greater strides. The next key element, authentic alignment. If you look at the items listed in the parentheses, there's standards. We know we have preschool standards and kindergarten standards. There's curricula in preschool and in kindergarten, and there's many research-based curriculums available for people to choose that really relate to the development of the children that are appropriate. We know there's lots going on with instruction and different webinars on how to do the best with our instruction, whether we're working with the preschool or kindergarten, and a variety of research-based assessments. But I think the key word here is authentic. And if we think of the authentic alignment, this really also correlates with the summary of finding slides, where it talks about aligned teaching and learning and aligned assessment and data. And oh, here comes that word data. Data is really important. I know a lot of us in the fields sometimes are like data. Some of you I know absolutely love data, and others of you are like shy away from it. But data, if we have that data and we have things documented, it can really help us learn how we can work together better for preschool through kindergarten transition. That can really guide us with maybe some extra good policies and practices. Please do also keep adding any ideas you have in the chat box, because all your colleagues will be able to read these and have a chance to see them. This slide actually has strategies involved in it for how do we help the child and the family as they move through this transition from preschool to kindergarten. And keeping in mind, we know right now a lot of this has been done or is being done virtually. And there's a lot of this that many of you may have already done. But what I am going to charge to you is, how can we keep these open connections between preschool and kindergarten stronger as we're doing these strategies, and make sure that we're continuing to work across all sectors? Remember where preschool children are coming from, all those different places: home, community childcare and preschool, Head Start, Preschool for All, and Preschool for All expansion, keeping the cross sector in mind. And here's a couple strategies, and I think as this webinar evolves, you're going to even hear more detailed things about this, and please share your ideas in the chat box. But there's children visiting kindergarten classrooms or even seeing them remotely. Kindergarten teachers visiting preschool classrooms. Home visits, whether they're virtual or later on in the future, they back to being face-to-face. Offering workshops and networking for families. Families really need that opportunity to network too and share how their lives are going with each other. They get a lot of ideas from each other. Attendance at school-wide events. I was working with a school right at the beginning of COVID, and they were able to still have a children's musician offer an event where many of the families got on via Zoom, and it brought that the early childhood community and the kindergarten community together again, even though we had a social distance. So there's a lot of those different things happening out there. A lot of you are doing kindergarten orientations, and keep up that family child learning programs, and have them be in a place where families really enjoy doing activities with their children and seeing where that learning really happens in an intentional play-based way through science, through math, through movement. And again, please write your ideas in the chat box. We've got 45 wonderful participants in this webinar, and you're doing things every day. Please, please share. This final slide in this section is about program level transition planning strategies. Now, I do want to make note that at the bottom of this slide, there is a source I'd like you to check out in the future days about transition and alignment from preschool to kindergarten from September of 2018. And if that article will also elicit more thoughts for you as you go on this journey of really opening up your communication with the preschool community, the kindergarten community, school districts, and everywhere. And here's a couple great ideas. what if we came up with using some common transition forms across programs and schools? Sometimes when families have to fill out all these multiple forms, it's so overwhelming for them. And if there were some common forms across the sectors, might we make families' lives a little bit easier? Dot point two, there are a lot of different transition teams and liaisons going on in districts and school districts, and some in community-based. But the charge here is, let's make sure we're really broad and really make sure we're opening up this opportunity, that we're really working as a transition team together, because everyone has great ideas. Dot point three is such a fabulous idea. Thinking in the future of when professional development is happening with the preschool staff and kindergarten staff, no matter where they are, and maybe even first grade, could we bring them together and really have some unified professional development? Because all these different ideas spark different ideas, and ideas then become endless. Dot point four, that wonderful important word about shared data and common data. Let's learn from each other and see what's documented and what is the data showing us. What is data showing us? Let's share our data. And the next dot point, teacher to teacher conferences. It'd be a great day when preschool teachers from whatever sector and kindergarten teachers from whatever sector could talk together and share. Preschool teachers share what they're seeing, kindergarten teachers share what they're seeing. So please do write additional ideas in the chat box. All of your colleagues on this will be seeing them all. And I'm going to stop now because there's other wonderful presenters that you need to hear from. And thank you so much for all the work that you do. But I do have to say this because I'm thinking of John Lewis a lot this week. And let's get into good communication, necessary good communication, or in John's words, really good trouble, necessary trouble. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I had to get myself off of mute, and I also want to do like Tamara and do a sound check to make sure everyone can hear me. So if you can raise your hand just so I know I'm being heard. Thank you. I see the hands go up. Awesome. Well, I am excited about being with you this afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining. I took down notes of who was on the call, on the webinar, and reasons for joining. So I appreciate your input. And we are going to get started with my section. And I am also just going to give a little background about myself. When anyone asks me what I do or what is it that I do, I always answer teacher, no matter where it seems like I end up in the education field, because that is who I am and how I feel at the core. I'm a primary teacher certified in pre-K through third, and have taught all of those grade levels. Then I went on to teach teachers, so to speak. I was a new teacher coach, and absolutely loved that job because it felt like me, the best of both worlds. While I still was in the classroom, I still had was able to support teachers and still was in the school. So I had kids still running up to me, hugging me, and things like that. Then I worked in social service for a while with with youth and care, and was was an education coach as well as an early childhood manager, and supporting and advocating for early childhood for youth and care. And now I am a family engagement manager with the Girl in This Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development. So that brings me here with you all today and talking about what kindergarten transition could possibly look like, looking at it through two or several lenses, one being the KTAC report, which Dr. Taylor mentioned before, and one kind of through the lens of what we're going through now with COVID going on, and just the landscape of not just early childhood, but of our world being different. So I want to start from just my experience and my background with kindergarten transition experience when I was teaching. When I was in the classroom, it felt like the kindergarten transition consisted of records exchange. There was a day, I believe, even the kindergartners graduated or got out of school a week early so that the teachers could get the records together and put stuff, their files together. It was a certain order the files had to be in. And unfortunately, this seemed or felt like this was the crux of that transition, was getting records together, getting the records to the new teacher, and talking a little bit about the kids that you were worried about. Basically, it was watch out for this one. It kind of felt like. And as I reflect on my teaching and my experience, and as I grow, I've realized that there were some things that worked well with my kindergarten transition, and some things that I wanted to do better, or what to do better, or wanted to be intentional about. So for me, I had a really good relationship with the larger primary department. I was a teacher in the school district. So I did have a relationship with the preschool teacher, and going up with the first grade teacher. We had meetings, we talked. But what, for me, in being reflective as I look back, what I kind of looked at as I wish I wanted to do something better around that, was intentional relationship building with parents as well as with colleagues, in that some of the stuff that happened was what I would say was a happy accident. Because we were talking often about what was going on in our rooms, we found out or gleaned some more information, but it wasn't intentional. So that word became very important to me, it being intentional. And that's what I'm sure all of you all are here for, is to find out some intentional information and to be intentional. So as I move forward, what we're going to do is just model that idea. So if you, preliminary question, and we're just going to do the first question, the sunshine question of like, yeah, this is what works, and we have a poll up. So what aspects, now thinking of what you can control, the power that you have, what you have the power to act on, because I know there are a lot of things within your school, within your classroom, or within your center or your community program that you want to change, but you may not have the control over. So thinking of just what we have power to act on, think of that kind of sunglass question. What aspects of kindergarten transition right now for you are working well, that you would say, even if it's not all the way to a goal you want, but it's working in a positive way. So kind of put in the poll that you see, what aspect of your kindergarten transition is working well. And that's the chat on the left. I'll do wait time. I like that, not sure. Oh, and I meant to say that they are anonymous, so don't worry about, being, we, as Dr. Taylor said earlier, we're all learning this together. So I appreciate that the polls are anonymous, so don't worry about feeling a little intimidated about putting your answers in. Okay, let's see, we have preparing for skills that children need to move on, bringing local, the IEP transition. These are great. Sharing the goal data, all right. They asked for my input. Collaboration. Parents are excited about, but just not sure of the district opening process yet. Communication, with the IEPs. All right, that's actually really good, transition of IEPs. Teacher collaboration, small group planning. So thank you for this. This is good to know. Bringing local kindergarten teachers into the classroom to talk about kindergarten. That's a really interesting. Parent-teacher collaboration. That's awesome. So I'm thinking collaboration. We host a kindergarten transition meeting for parent and teachers from the school that they will be attending. That's awesome. I give parents a checklist of common things their child should know. Awesome. So that is, it sounds like there's a lot of awesome things going on. So now we'll move, and I want to hold that because we're going to come back to this, because I'm going to kind of plug these ideas into the KTAC, which Dr. Taylor mentioned earlier, which is the Kindergarten Transition Advisory Committee report. So now I see you are already filling in the what aspect of kindergarten transition would you work on? The kind of you have the sunglass moment, and then the let me see what I would want to improve. And you all are already typing. Awesome. So preschool teachers preparing children for the transition, more support from the district, the collaboration and communication between child care centers and the school, parent involvement, yes. Preschool teachers preparing, I said that one, okay. Welcoming students to be to be comfortable. That's an important one as well. Incorporating families, communication, collaboration. I'm hearing a lot of the collaboration, which Tamara just mentioned as well. More support from the district. I think I read that one. Let's see, it's moving fast. I'm trying to keep up with what I'm seeing. I saw something about worried something. Incorporating families into the process. So a lot of families, a lot of collaboration involving families. K and preschool teachers understanding the role of each other and what is actually taught and how it's taught. So that's another part of that collaboration. So thank you for this. I want to keep that in mind. So keep in mind what you wrote and what others wrote that may resound with you or that may sit with you. And what I want to do now is thinking of what you all just said and some of the challenges as well as the strengths. I want you to think about the three ideas or the three main focuses with the KSAC report. The first one being aligned teaching and learning. And in this one, so you're kind of going to look and see where the challenge that you just mentioned, what you would want to work on, where it would fall in the three main focus, skills focus for the KSAC report. So the first one being aligned teaching and learning. And within that, who would be someone you would reach out to? So someone I remember just said that knowing what is being taught, knowing what is being taught in the pre-K classroom as well as in the kindergarten classroom. So that could possibly go under aligned teaching and learning. What's great about teaching is we all know a lot of things bleed together and have the potential to go in different categories based on how you look at it, but that could easily go into aligned teaching and learning. So who would be an advocate or an adversary, an advocate and to support you if what you just mentioned as something you want to work on, if it went under aligned teaching and learning, who could you reach out to? Who could you either ask for support or reach out to because it's part of your goal? And what might that look like? Tamara gave great strategies, so I'm actually going to piggyback off of some of the strategies that she gave. Would it be finding out the curriculum that's used by the community partners? So that would mean the district kindergarten teacher reaching out to the community providers, the home child care providers, reaching out to who you know you get a lot of children from. And that goes both ways. So if I'm going to go ahead on to the second idea, which is aligned assessment and data. So under aligned assessment and data, same idea. Who would be your supports and who would be your that you could reach out to, and what might this look like for you? And the third one being strengthen cross-sector partnerships. So what I want to do is I want you to think about those three categories. Where would so you can write this yourself. This would be a note you would write to yourself, and we're at the end, we're going to do an action plan. But write a note to yourself and just think about where this would, and you can even put it in the chat. We can even have this in the chat of where your your challenge would fall, and then thinking of strategies that could help support. Now, one way you can do this is use your strength. Use the item that you said works well for being able to support the item that you have a challenge on. For example, I'll use me for an example. So what worked well for me was I did have a good relationship, collaborated with my other colleagues within the primary department. What was a challenge was being intentional about that partnership with parents and that communication with parents. So what I would have done, mine would have been under strengthening cross-sector partnerships, is what I would have focused on. And I would have used my strength with cross-sector partnerships with the preschool teacher. And she was awesome with family connection. And she had parents in her room all the time. They would naturally come in and would seek her support. So the parents knew her program. And so their transition with her, within her program, was seamless because she was intentional about that relationship. So I would have reached out to her. And if I was being intentional, I would have also reached out more intentionally to the first grade teacher to find out what I needed to have ready or to do with my children in that aspect as well. So I just saw no audio. Okay, I'm going to pause. Am I back? Okay, some people can still hear. Okay, that happened to us earlier too, so I apologize for that. So I'm going to keep going and hopefully it bounces back in. It's saying it's cutting in and out. Okay, I'm going to keep talking and hope that I can be heard for the most part. So if we think so, like I said, you're going to create an action plan in a couple of minutes. But if we think about where it kind of gives you a lens or a focus, and if these are the three things that the KTAC report has identified are the large things within kindergarten transition that are important, where might you focus your attention, or where might your strength and your what you want to work better, where might it fall? So would it fall under strengthening cross-sector relationships? Would it fall under aligned assessment and data, which we also mentioned? This could be, and what would this look like? So this could possibly be sharing information, general information. It could be saying, I've noticed that, I have 50% of my students this year came to my early childhood program ready with their identifying, they had these kind of social skills, or they were ready to identify their colors, like they were already primed and ready to learn. I have 25% in this area. And it may be the early childhood community, the community provider reaching out to the school district with that information, or to the teacher, not necessarily breaking confidentiality of giving specific children's names depending on you all's areas confidentiality, but just giving a general idea. And that would also go both ways in reaching out to help support the kindergarten teacher, as well as support the ECE provider in understanding what the kindergarten expectation was. And I see someone typed even in the chat that it's so important for the K teachers to understand what preschool teachers do every day. Many don't understand that we teach through play. They just think we babysit and play. And that, Samantha, would be an awesome introductory in. It could possibly be sending a newsletter. I know a lot of providers, home care providers and small community providers have newsletters that they give to their parents, or information that they give to their parents. That would be a great idea to include that in how is me, what I do in playing through, learning through play, what skills am I aligning? What skills am I addressing that are important in kindergarten? And putting that in some kind of newsletter or some kind of introductory form, and either sending it. Now with COVID, it might be virtual instead of taking it up there physically, but making that connection and including that information that, yes, we learn through play, but this is how it supports brain development. This is how it supports kindergarten transition, and having that open dialogue, which would look to me would go in several areas. That could go under strengthening cross-sector partnerships, as well as aligned teaching and learning. that could go both directions. So thank you for that call out. That is difficult, a difficult move sometimes. So we're now going to go into an action plan and thinking about the 3 main focus areas, also thinking about what you want to work on as a challenger that you want to improve. And then what's awesome is that Tamara gave some really good specific strategies. So the next slide is an action step. So in thinking about the aspect again of kindergarten transition, I can't get it out, that you want to work on, type in one idea that when you get off of this webinar today, you can say, I am about to do this. This is what I'm going to do. It aligns with the KTAC report. It works under either aligned assessment, aligned teaching and learning, or it's building those partnerships. And I am going to attempt to do this based on what I am already doing. You can use that as leverage and kind of think of how you want to improve or increase that aspect of kindergarten transition that you put in earlier. So if it's collaboration, who can you reach out to help you? It might be somebody on your team. It might be somebody that's over your kindergarten program that you can reach out, or your ECE program that you can reach out to and say, can you help me bridge the gap with our community provider? Can we send the framework? It may be sending a framework. I love the idea of having a workshop that Tamara mentioned. I was even thinking of attending the open house. The open house might be virtual now. So getting on the newsletter of the district school can support that as well. You can find out when the meetings are. You can find out when the open houses are and be intentional about reaching out for those collaborations. You can send your lesson plans or your framework, or ask to send them. Connect with the teacher, and like Samantha was saying early, send a snippet of, this is what I do. I know a lot of my children or my students come to your program, so I want to reach out to you. And just finding, and if it doesn't work one time, being intentional about following up and saying, okay, what else can I do? And the idea that the community partners can definitely have skin in the game and have definite value in reaching out to the district, or a collaboration with other community partners. That could possibly also work if you know that there's another small either community program or home program near you. Maybe you all can work together and reach out, finding out if there is a day that especially now with COVID, there may be a day that the teachers are physically in the school coming up. Get your mask on and bring your hand sanitizer with you, and see about going up to the school safely if it's permitted, because I know it's different. Different districts throughout the state are doing different things with opening, and teachers might be there, and finding out, or calling actually the school and finding out, is there a way I can make an appointment, 3 of us together get children, or have a lot of children that go to your school. And we want to really make sure that our children are prepared based on what's happening in your kindergarten classroom. So I would like to know that. So I'm seeing some stuff and giving people a chance to type up what their ideas are. So I have connect with the pre-K teacher to make a game plan for virtual transition process. That's a great idea. Find aligning assessment tools. That's an awesome one. That can sometimes very simply be done, and looking at a kindergarten assessment and a pre-K assessment and seeing, especially in kids, that happens often, that you can see how they're aligned in that social emotional learning piece, definitely. Connect with teachers and other team members. Look at various assessments and compare them. That's what somebody else just said. Supporting team members to gain parent involvement. Connect with teacher and parent. Reach out to the mentors for past successes and talking to the teachers. Connect with the teacher and parent. Yes, making those, and for me, it just became intentional as opposed to it being an accident and happy accident. So thank you for your input and for making that first step. And it seems like a lot of things we had early with the poll, 50% of you were already doing some of these things and having that lens and having that work. It's now, you can just look through the lens of the KTAC report of how you're already doing those things within those three focus topics within the KTAC report. And I'm happy you're here, and good luck with your this upcoming school year with your kindergarten transition work. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Iris. Hello, everyone. I'm Jaclyn Vasquez. I'm so happy to be a part of this conversation today, and I am so grateful for everybody that has been typing away, giving great ideas, and connecting with each other. It's really great, as a former educator, knowing that there is support and that I wasn't alone in trying to figure out what we were doing in our classroom. So I'm really hoping that you have some ideas from today. Let me give you a little bit about myself. So I started my career as a teaching assistant, and I quickly moved into an early childhood educator. I have my background is in birth to third grade, special education, bilingual education as well. I then received my master's in literacy. I'm a literacy specialist, and I'm working on my doctorate, almost done with that, in curriculum and instruction. I am a former Chicago Public Schools administrator. And, oh, I see I'm having some audio issues here. Let's go ahead and do another hand raise if you can hear me. Couple. Great. Great, great. Okay, I'm going to keep on going, but if it gets to be too much, please continue to mark it in the chat box. So I am a former Chicago Public School administrator. I am the former manager of the Child Parent Centers, and I am currently the associate director of the Early Development Instrument for Erickson Institute under the Policy and Leadership Department. Now, over my time, I've had a lot of different experiences with transitions. I was a practitioner. I did a lot of work on transitions in my classroom. And it can be, I will say, it can be very, very exhausting. And, you know, trying to find time to fit it into the day on top of all of the other requirements of the day that your administration brings, that your curriculum requires, that your funding boundaries require, that, and I remember when I was an early childhood educator, I didn't know about the community supports that were available or the other organizations that people were connecting or doing the work. So as a practitioner, I just knew at the end of the day, I was trying to connect families and trying to help them feel comfortable coming into the classroom, but it's a lot of work. And I love that everybody is here today to think about better ways to connect and to really strengthen that work so that children and families are coming in stronger and ready to learn. I also developed a model for transitions during my time in Chicago Public Schools. I worked with the community of Altgeld Riverdale, and I'm going to share a little bit about that in a little while here. And that's been something that has been a theme in my work that I've been working with different communities. I work specifically on data sets. But when the conversation in the early childhood world pops up around transitions, we often talk about ways to transition and conversations on how we can better support community-wide transitions. I'm also and have been a community consultant to organize citywide transitions. So when I say citywide, I think what you've heard over my past couple colleagues on this call have discussed, really expanding beyond your classroom, your school, into the community with community-based partners as well as other pre-K and kindergarten classrooms across the community. That's what I'm talking about when I say citywide transitions. All right, I'm going to go into the next. I want to be very cognizant of our time together because I see that we are running short on time, but I always like to come back to why are we engaging in transitions to begin with? Why is it so important? So for those of you who are familiar with this, if you're familiar with Brothenbrenner's ecological systems theory, please go ahead and give me a hand raise there. A few. Here we go. Great. So on this picture here that you see, you'll see different concentric circles. This is Grafenbrenner's ecological systems theory, and it organizes the context of development into 5 levels of external influence. So it really explains how the inherent qualities of children and their environments interact and influence how a child grows and develops. So if you take a look right in the middle there, you see that little child, and that the immediate close influences. You have culture, peers, family, school. We know that those all will influence a child as they develop. But we have to continue to take a look at those concentric circles and think about how they truly influence children as they develop. Thinking of community centers, mass media, medical institutions, school systems, social conditions, national customs, politics, the nation and what's happening globally. Think about our pandemic. This will have generational effects, and we have to think about how this is influencing the development of our children. And of course, the economy. So when I'm thinking about how a child is growing and developing, what does this all mean as far as transitions? Well, it means that the quality of those immediately surrounding the child and others, think of caregivers, families, think of school systems, community-based organizations, all will have a direct influence on the development on that child, on their brain development. And as they continue to grow, we want to make sure that we are all in alignment to support the child for optimal development. So I wanted to kind of go into, now I know I'm going to go through some things on the slide that you have heard in a couple of the other slides here, but I think it's really important to reiterate some really important guiding principles, because well thought out and executed transitions built upon solid principles will give you a great outcome for your transitions for all of your students, for families, and for you as an educator. So one concept that I always think is really important is that transitions are not a one-time activity, and it's not exclusive to a certain time of the year. I know when I first began, I thought of transitions as possibly, welcoming night, family welcoming night. And that quickly expanded into thinking about how can I continue to have families feel more welcome with me and into the school system and the school district overall. Then it was also great to see, as I started expanding and learning more, how it moved into the spring, preparing for children that were going to be going into kindergarten, but also preparing to bring children into pre-K. But that really grew into thinking about how do we work on transitions and ongoing support through the entire year? How are we always connecting with other educators, aligning our assessments, aligning our curriculum, talking about data? How are we connecting and building our relationships so we understand each other? How are we working with families so that they feel supported? And how are we then introducing them to other classrooms so they can continue to feel supported as the families holistically transition? Another thought is, and I know, again, you've heard a lot of this conversation already, but being inclusive when we're thinking about transitions, thinking of multilingual learners, children with special needs, thinking about not just your classroom, beyond your classroom to your school and other community-based organizations, thinking about horizontal and vertical alignment. So when I say vertical alignment, I'm talking if you are a kindergarten teacher, thinking about what we're doing across all the kindergarten classrooms that can be supportive as children also transition throughout the year. Sometimes we have communities that have highly transient families that transition between classrooms and schools. But then really thinking about that, that's horizontal alignment. And then thinking vertical, we want to think about, coming from community-based organizations or within the school, pre-K to K, those years of transitioning, but thinking beyond just those years to really expanding all the way up through third grade and then continuing that alignment conversation. And I also know we talked about data. Now, I'm the data girl. I really, I never thought I would sit and say, oh, I love data. But I've gotten to use so many different types of data to help guide my decisions. But not just cold data. I think it's really important that we ask questions about data to learn about what's really happening from family and children's perspectives to help us make the best decisions. So some of the data sets that I have listed here, I know we spoke about teaching strategies gold in those early years and kindergarten individual development survey. These are both ongoing authentic observation tools meant to be used with our children to help guide and really not just as assessments. And for example, the kindergarten individual development survey for kids used to identify school readiness. It's also meant to help teachers really hone in and identify and intentionally plan for their students, just as the teaching strategies goal is. But since both of these use observations, that is a really easy entryway into having conversations between pre-K and K because you're both doing ongoing observational assessments. It's a wonderful way to sit down and start talking about similar strategies of collecting observations during the day, or talking about what are the implications or the trends that we're seeing across the students that are matriculating into the next grade, or that are across the classrooms in a school district. I put in there the EDI since that's what I work on. The early development instrument is a population level measure, and there are other population level measures out there as well. This one provides data at a census tract level. So it gives really in-depth level information that really is meant to bring those other outside community organizations together to better support the holistic and whole child well-being of children and families so that they do enter school ready to learn. It is very complementary with tools like kids and teaching strategies goals done at a different point in the year, but it gives that, that community-wide lens. The Risk and Reach is another really great website, a really great data set. It is a comprehensive data set of the analysis of early childhood well-being indicators in relationship to state investments. So thinking about this data comes to you by county level. So as an administrator, I think it's really important when writing for additional grants and funding opportunities for schools and for my classrooms, using data sets like the Risk and Reach, TSG Kids, EDI. It really gives you a sharp and intentional way of writing for a more robust support for your classrooms. I also wanted to talk about biases. This is another idea we've been talking about here. Iris and I think Samantha had brought it up earlier about not being able to, like kindergarten teachers, not really knowing what pre-K teachers do. And I think that that can be similar in understanding what kindergarten teachers are required to do with assessments and whatnot. I think we have to really talk about checking our biases. We have a lot of different biases, and I think that it just has to start with conversations. You know, I think the conversation around play in and of itself is always something that as an early childhood educator, we had to educate parents, administration, and other colleagues to understand it is so much more than designing just playtime. So these are conversations that have to be started so that we can better understand and respect each other's work. But I also think that there are biases when we're talking about families. Oftentimes, there may be different biases held against different groups of families and thinking about different social, economic, racial. We have to have these very important conversations to best support all of our children. So it starts with being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and having very important decisions and checking our own views and biases so that we can better support all of the children and families that are coming through our programs. A few more guiding principles that I wanted to touch upon is thinking about family leadership and advocacy. We had some conversations today about family engagement, bringing in families, but I think that it's really important how we use language. I think we typically hear family engagement, and I would like to hear that be family empowerment and leadership. It's so important when we are working on transitions that parents feel like they have a voice in their children's growth, development, and a part of the school system. If we bring them in and ask them for their advice and support, chances are they're willing to give it. And for those that are not ready yet, we have a lot of other work, and we need to step back and think about what do these partnerships mean and why, which brings me to my next point. Family expectations of care and learning settings can vary. So we have to also think about many families have past experiences that can affect what's happening with their own children and their experience in the school system. So we know that families have experience that may be influenced by their culture, by languages, by their own backgrounds, by the age and level of development and influences how their children are experiencing transitions. The settings may be different, and we know that we're coming between different rules and boundaries. So we just have to be aware and remember that we want to meet parents where they're at so that we can bring them together on a really successful journey together. So I know we spoke quite a bit on communication, but I think in any work that we do, communication is always key. We always know that when we want to figure out, well, what happened? Why was there a misunderstanding? It always comes back to a communication issue. So communication, being very clear, multiple languages, and multiple modalities of connecting will be very key, especially right now, since we not all are having this time together to have lots of communication face to face. So we need to be considerate of that. And I also say being considerate. We need to be considerate of our journey, and just remember we can only do what we can do. Now, I see that we have just a couple minutes with me. I'm gonna wrap up in 2 minutes, but I'm gonna kind of run through the next few slides. I apologize, but we do have a lot of this, and I think Antoinette, Dr. Taylor, if we could possibly send out some additional supports on what I'm about to share here. I have some examples and strategies from the field. So we have, I work with All Girls Riverdale. It's a community in one of the neighborhoods in Chicago, and they have a robust prenatal to third grade early childhood, early learning initiative. One of the components of it is their pre-K to K transitions model. The goals are really to be ongoing year-round continuity between classroom practices across multiple settings in the community that are inclusive of both public and private schools. They wanted to build those relationships between teachers, parents, children, and the community institutions, and to increase teacher and program school knowledge and the capacity of what's needed for transitions in their community. So the model brought together cross-system, cross-school, cross-grade professional community that met once a month, still is ongoing 5 years later. They agree on common classroom practices across pre-K and K because many children are moving between buildings and between classrooms. So they work on self-regulation. They did work on dramatic play, but they are now moving into attendance and really focus on PD around trauma-sensitive practices. As well as another major component is family engagement. So they would rotate their family nights between all of the schools and all of the teachers would support these once a month activities for the families that would, like I said, rotate across. And they also did an entire community-wide field trip. Now, thinking through what's happening right now, some of these things will have to change because we're not meeting in person, we're not bringing a lot of people together, but we are starting to think about how are we going to really support social emotional practices? How are we still supporting self-regulation if we're not in front of children? And what are some manipulatives and classroom practices that we can align and bring out to the community if they're not necessarily in front of us? Worked with the DuPage KTAC pilot. So we talked about the KTAC. So the first year of the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, last year they had funding that went out to DuPage for a pilot of the KTAC. They reviewed 67 recommendations of kindergarten transitions. They conducted a thorough review. They were able to develop the feasibility criteria, specifically thinking around what would it take to do these transitions. And thinking about COVID-19, you may want to go back through the KTAC, take a look at these activities and say, what kind of resources would we need? What kind of personnel if we're going to do outreach? Is this sustainable? And what kind of time do we need to complete these things? And then, as it was said earlier, establish a plan, write it down, set a timeline, identify resources, and ensure your strategies address trauma, anti-racist, equity, social emotional learning, getting special education, multilingual learners. We really want to think about what is happening with our children and our families in our community. And finally, we're working with, this year, in the Governor's Office of Early Childhood is also going to be working with a few more communities, and Greater East St. Louis is currently doing some of their transition planning. And they're thinking specifically with COVID-19, how are they going to work with teachers and outside organizations that will be, since their children will be remote, how will they be working to align their work with the programs that are going to be taking children that are not necessarily in the school system, that are not going to be attending in person, but be supporting the families with children in their organizations? And how can they align curriculum so that children are still getting strong support preparing to come into school, as well as thinking about this is a fantastic parent group in Greater East St. Louis, and they do a lot of outreach with families. So really starting to think about parent empowerment and how to connect with families to ensure that they're getting hands-on, manipulative, and the communication needed to support that alignment coming back into the school system. I'm so sorry I had to rush through all of that, but I thank you for your time.
Okay, I'm gonna thank you, great, thank you everyone. Karen did share that you all received a copy of this, so I'm really gonna real quickly move through Grace, simply because she was so kind to share with us her slides. She is from Illinois Action from Children, and she is the director of Partner Plan Act. They are funded through ISB and the Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development. And here's what they do with technical assistance. So you've got StarNet, which does a lot of technical assistance around young children with special needs, and then Partner Plan Act, CS3. They do a lot of strategic training and technical assistance around building the capacities for communities to really be able to collaborate. And one thing that Grace always talks about is look around and see who your whole community is. Faith-based community, don't leave them out during this time. A lot of them are having virtual services. They're putting out announcements to their families. Reach out to them. And for our Head Start programs, our community-based programs in particular, if you are not getting feedback from a particular school, call the school district. It's hard to know what buildings are open and if they have their secretaries in a building or not. Call the school district and say, typically we have students in our program that have come to your district historically, and so we need your help understanding what your 2021 opening of the school year plan is going to be like. We need your help connecting with these building level administrators because we have children that are going to be coming to your district. Don't underestimate the power of calling a school district if you're not getting an answer from a school. Here is the date for the family engagement webinar that's going to take place next week. And I also wanted to go back to where the poll from Tamara, where people were saying, I would love a mentor. If you go to my website, because when you register, It doesn't necessarily tell us exactly where you're from. I'm putting my website in there again. If you were one of the people that said, I would love a mentor to just kind of help me think of what does this look like to just start that communication, go to my website. It will just say contact us. And what I would like to do is work with ECPL. Connie is on here from the kids coaches. That is all the folks that are connected to kindergarten. I will circle back with Stephanie Hurling from StarNet and see what we can do to try to at least match you with ideas or with people who were the ones that were saying, yeah, we've kind of done this before, so we have an idea. We're at 2:31, so I want to quickly say don't underestimate the evidence-based practices that you already did in this time of COVID-19. Call the district, talk to your families, ask them if they've looked to see what school that is in their area. Then they can come back to you with information and you can get the ball rolling. But I really want to try to see if we can help folks that said you need mentors. So go to my website, just your name, and I need to know where you are in the state. Because if you're up north, quite naturally, we want to see if there is, ECPL, all of the Preschool for All and Preschool for All expansion programs, they facilitate the professional learning for that. They may very easily be able to see what district you are surrounding in and be able to help connect you to either a district. Likewise with kids, we might be able to see, according to where you are, what schools or what kindergarten programs are already in that district that through the kids pro coaching we might be able to connect you to. I think that's a really good idea. So much information. I want to thank all of my co-presenters today. You could hear their passion in presenting to you. The last part of this webinar is a ton of resources. Use them at your leisure. You may want to jump on all of them now and go through them right away. You may want to wait until you have more clarity from your district or your director. But all of those resources are vetted, and they will certainly help you to be able to take the information that we gave you, pull that information out, and use it going forward. I've looked at all the chats. We'll certainly be using this information from the chats to inform what we'll be doing on August 5th. I'm going to turn this over to Connie. Thank you for staying with us a little bit longer, and thank you for joining us today. But please, please, please reach out with clarifying questions, wonderings, things that you were missed from the chat. The goal here is to help you have concrete solutions to be able to support your children and your families as with this ongoing uncharted waters from Head Start, community-based, church-based, home-based to kindergarten. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn this over to ECPL. Thank you all so much for your time today.
Thank you.